can and should take care of one another, and that healthy families create healthy communities that ultimately create healthy economies that create a healthy Georgia, and that's what y'all are participating in this morning. And so I'm grateful to be here, and Superintendent, good to see you. He may not be aware of this, but he's done had a tremendous impact, and he's included a lot of different groups across the state. And my daughter is part of a student advisory council that is through the state's superintendent's office here of schools, and he may not even be aware that she's on that council, because I don't even know how it was selected. But she's participated in multiple meetings throughout the year down at the I guess at y'all's offices, and has had input as students. Now imagine that, getting input from high schoolers from all over the state, participating and giving their feedback, and I don't know that I've ever heard of that happening before. So let me thank you for including young folks. I think that's so important that we do that. I'm going to touch on just a couple of things this morning, and certainly take questions if you like. I'm here for you. This is your time, and I want to be able to exhaust any questions you have based on that. A couple of things, just maybe two or three things. Clearly, this past 6-7 weeks have been a very different time in Washington, D.C. Have y'all noticed that? A lot of news lately within the Republican Party, within the country, and within the state, or within the world. And I'll start first just with this past week. And the last 8 days in the world have exposed a tremendous void that has been left since this president took office. And it's created this terrorism aspect that he was warned of, and I think we all knew would occur if we as a country did not continue to exhibit a strong force in the world, have a strong defense and a strong presence, and just quite frankly, a backbone. And over the last couple of years particularly, I would say that a lack of foreign policy has created just a tremendous vacuum in the world that has been filled by militant terrorists. And that's what they are. Their objective is just to kill people and to cause fear and terror throughout the world. And it's and I would say it's their impact is worldwide. What they're trying to do. It's not targeted at one group or one race or one religion. It is very broad in their approach right now. And so what we've seen happen in the last 8 days, one, we've seen a very passive country such as France take tremendous force and respond appropriately, might I say, and something that maybe we should have done previously, because we've had Americans killed by these very same terrorists in the Middle East, their heads severed, and innocent American lives disposed of in terrible ways, and yet this president has not responded appropriately. Instead, has taken a very hands-off approach. But now we see that other countries are stepping up. But what we had to do this week was respond to the Syrian refugee crisis, and clearly it's a crisis. Now let me just say, I know we're a compassionate people. We're a generous and we're loving and caring people as a country. And we welcome and invite those who are experiencing horrible things across the world. But we must ensure our own safety and protection as a people and as a way of life. And what we learned over the last week, if not a little bit prior to that, is that there really is no vetting process. There was no background check process in place, and you can probably watch a lot of the videos and watch what was happening in Europe and just see the flood of people, and you have to ask yourself, can any reasonable person really check out these individuals and find out if they truly are who they say they are, and if they pose any risk to anyone? And we have found that, really, quite frankly, that wasn't in place here in the United States like it should have been. So this week we just took a very proactive response and said, Mr. President, if we're going to accept any refugees from Syria or Iraq, then they must go through a very solid process of background checks. And really it's just pausing. It's not saying we don't want to accept refugees, or we understand the plight of the refugees, but it's just hesitation just for a second. Can we not verify that they are who they say they are, and that they do not pose a risk to the American people or our way of life? That's what this week was all about. And you saw 47 Democrats join with us in the House to say, that makes sense. That's what we should be doing. And the president issued a veto threat very quickly, as you can imagine. But you have to ask yourself, why would he issue a veto threat to only do what he said was already happening? Isn't that interesting? And why is it that Charles Schumer all of a sudden now is opposed to that in the Senate? And they'll use the filibuster likely to block it in the Senate. And yet the American people, Republican and Democrat and non-voter alike or non-affiliated alike, are saying, wait, this is about our country. This is not about excluding any one person or people or a young child or a mother or anything. It's just about saying, hey, can we not just have verification in place? This verification was real simple. It just required the intelligence agencies to sign off. That's it. Supporting, quite frankly, what Governor Deal was asking for. And let me applaud him for that. He reacted very quickly to say, look, the importance of our state, it comes before this crisis right now. Until you as a federal government can determine to me, and I am satisfied, that you have a process in place to verify who these individuals are. Because look, the federal government was compelling the states to take these settlers, settling them into the states. And now you have 30 plus states, Republicans and Democrats alike, saying, whoa, 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 this is not right. So this is going to be a collision that occurs. It's going to be a states' rights collision occurring here over the next couple of weeks, and you'll watch it play out. And I think it's a healthy debate for us to have as a country. But hopefully it leads us to a foreign policy debate. And that is, what are we going to do as a country? Are we going to have foreign policy in place that is you remember the Gadsden flag? You know, and the symbolism of the Gadsden flag, one of the first American flags, quite frankly. And I know that it's something that's been revisited over the last couple of years, but it was the rattlesnake. And the rattlesnake was used as a symbol to say that, look, we will always warn, there will always be a warning, but when provoked, we will strike. We have to get back to that mentality as a country. And I don't know that we've been warning, and we sure haven't been striking, but I still believe in the rattlesnake concept there, that us as a country, that's how we should approach some of these threats. Secondly, I'll talk about spending real quick. We've probably not done a great job of selling what we have been able to do with this president in office and getting him to sign into law, but let me just say we're on a better track than we've ever been. Discretionary spending levels are pre-Pelosi right now. Our debt level is, our deficit is down to a point that is back to George Bush days. Not great, but Barack Obama did triple it. Did y'all realize that? He tripled the debt. I mean the deficit. Now the debt obviously is certainly going to 20 billion now, or 20 trillion, I'm sorry.
Yes, more zeros.
And yeah, just a couple more zeros. $20 trillion. And obviously I did not support that budget deal that just came through. But a few highlights that I want you to know that we've been fighting for. Any fans of the IRS in here? No? Okay. Just checking before but we cut the IRS $345 million this past year.
Aww.
The president signed into law. Can you believe that? Yeah. They are now, they're what was it, $1.2 billion in cuts over the last couple of years to the IRS, and they're pretty upset with us. The EPA, any fans of the EPA in here? Really? Come on. They're back to 1989 employee levels. Can you believe that? So they're not real happy with us. So and then to hit, I know that the Common Core was brought up a moment ago, but we actually did away with Race to the Top, which was the driver of Common Core, and so that gives the flexibility back to the superintendents in our states and local governments. And then thirdly, let me just, and we've got a lot of work to do, let me tell you, but we're on a track now to I guess it's about $2.2 trillion in savings now that are real cuts. Not, remember how it used to be we're cutting what we're proposing to increase spending by or something like that? That was the cut. No, these are like real cuts happening. And including the House of Representatives, 21% cuts to all of our budgets within our House, in the House of Representatives. But you know what? The Senate didn't take any. Did you know they increased spending in the Senate under Harry Reid? They were going that direction. We were cutting by 21%. But then last, let me just say, the speaker, anybody keep up the speaker's race this last little bit? Interesting time. I could probably write a book over what happened over these last couple of months. But Paul Ryan's doing a great job, and I'll give you a little bit of insight to how his approach is different. And it was after the first week. The very first week, we had to vote on transportation bill. And it was normally a transportation bill would come to the House and it would be predetermined outcome. Okay, this is what the Senate will pass. Therefore, this is what we must pass. And this is what you must vote for. That used to be the old way of doing things. Paul said, that's not the way we're going to operate. We're going to be ground up. We're going to come from members up. We're going to go through the committee and we're going to do it right. And so it led to hundreds of amendments being debated, a lot of hours on the floor. Finally, we voted for it and it passed and it moved on, and a lot of good things were done there. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect because we're an imperfect body, but it was a process. It finally was working. Well, the next day, we had this meeting with Republicans, and there were a few Republicans complaining, and I know I shouldn't say that, but Republicans complain sometimes, and there were a few complaining that they had to vote late, that we had to go through all this debate, and that they had to take some tough votes. Can you believe that?
Well, they're not used to it.
Right. So Paul, he stood behind a lectern, and he just sort of shook his head. And he said, look, I've only been here a week, but you see how I'm going to operate this thing. I am not going to predetermine any outcomes. And I'm not going to protect you from tough votes. You got elected by 700,000 people to make tough decisions, and if you're unwilling to do that, you might want to find somebody else because there's going to be a bunch more coming. I was like, oh my, it's a new day in the House of Representatives. And so that's his operating style. You'll see that, we got to build through this process, but I think he's doing a fantastic job. He brings a new spirit to it and a new approach, and he's just not... He's not doing it as it always has been done before. He's doing it as he believes is the right way to do it, and that is allowing members to have input. And his expression was this, and I think he said it in his acceptance speech. He said, when I look out across the House of Representatives and I see all these members, I see America. Because each of you represent all of America in one way or another throughout the districts. And if I silence your voice, I'm silencing America. So this process will work and all America will be heard, and some things will pass and some things will fail, but America will have its voice heard. So that's the new leadership in Washington, D.C. with Paul Ryan. So thanks for letting me join you. I'll take questions. I know we're limited on time.